What is up, everybody? It's your boy DFS Jimmy back again this week to take on PGA National, break down the golf course for Fanshare Sports. If you're not already a member, make sure you get over to fansharesports.com. Check those guys out. A lot of great tools over there, as well as the patented ownership model that they have. And not to mention, my stuff's over there. So, if you're not already doing so, please follow me on Twitter at DFSJimmy. This week, we are making a drastic shift in course type, course location, grass type. Basically, we're going to go to a completely opposite style of golf than we've seen thus far this season. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. We are trekking to the East Coast. We are leaving the West Coast courses and the WGC down in Mexico. We are leaving behind the POA greens for the Bermuda stretches of Palm Beach Gardens and PGA National. A brutal, and I say brutal, it's annually one of the toughest golf courses on the tour. A Nicklaus designed par 70, just over 7,100 yards, but water is prevalent on 13 of the 18 holes. As you can see behind me, very, very different than what the golfers have been used to facing or used to seeing thus far this season. Plenty of bunkering, plenty of false fronts. It's a tough test of golf all around, not to mention it is Florida, and it can and probably will get breezy, at least for one round. It depends. I haven't checked the weather this week. We're a little too far out to do so, but definitely pay attention to the weather. There can be draw biases on this golf course. So, just keep an eye out for that, I guess. But for the most part, it's just a tough test of golf. And and guys will have to contend with some breezes, some swirling winds. The tall palm trees will be swaying down in South Florida at some point this week. So, wind players are, I don't think it's a huge factor, but something to keep in mind. And as we look at golfers, we're going to look at two things. We'll look at the scorecard, and we'll look at golfers that have had success here at this track. I think you'll see that some of the more consistent ball strikers, which also tend to be very good wind players, do have quite a bit of success at this track. So, annually one of the tougher courses, very tough to hit greens, as you see behind me. Small, shallow targets presented to the players, sometimes at an angle. Nothing is as it seems with the Nicklaus course. This course a bit different than maybe some of his other designs, as it doesn't favor bombers as much as maybe some of the other Nicklaus courses in his portfolio. Not really sure why, but either way, he kind of set this one up to be a much more technical test off of the tee. Need to place the ball in the appropriate spots so you give yourself an opportunity at some of these really tough to hit greens, and it's specifically tough to access pins. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of the holes are going to have sort of obstacles like this. You're going to have water in some respect on almost every hole, and you're going to have plenty of bunkering as well as false fronts. Sometimes those false fronts can, they're on the back side of the green and they're runaways and collection areas, but plenty of shaved areas for the ball to run away from you in. And depending on the weather, if the course is dry, can be a very, very difficult test of golf, both off the tee and into the green. Again, like I said, shallow targets for some of these players to hit. And they're in a lot of cases coming in with some long irons. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the course from a scorecard perspective, and then we'll take a look at some of the golfers that have had success here. But I think you'll see a pretty constant theme. Anyway, starting with the course, like I said, it is a tough test, averaging 1.61 strokes over par. It is home to the famous bear trap holes 15, 16, and 17. As you can see here, there is plenty of red. Those holes average, as you can see this little number right behind my head here, 0.70 strokes over par, just in that 3-hole stretch to close out your round. Nicklaus was kind in giving a par 5 on the 18th. Guys can make a stroke back, and it does make for some exciting finishes because it does give players chasing an opportunity to really go after it at the par 5 closing hole. So the last 4 holes of this tournament are always special. They always lead a lot of excitement. It makes for a great watch on Sunday afternoon. So make sure you make yourself available for that. But the rest of the course, you'll see number 6, annually one of the toughest toughest holes on tour, ranks inside the top 100 almost every year, inside the top 50 almost every year. So it is a brutal 480-yard par 4, water in play. Again, just it's a really, really tough golf hole. False fronts, guys struggle to hold the green here. You can almost plan on a bogey for your golfers. But for the most part, there's only a few places for guys to score. If you look down here, you only have the 2 par 5s that average well under par. Guys are going to have to make hay on the par 5s this week if they're going to contend at all, because everything else is basically a bogey waiting to happen. All your par 5s, all your par 4s, 8 of the par 4s, all averaging well over par. You do have 3 shorter par 4s, but they basically average out to even par. So not a big savings there. And then the par 3s, very tough. Water in play. Long irons, you need to be on this week. You can't fake it around this track. There's just too many places to get yourself in trouble, specifically off the tee. And into the green too, because you do have to scramble here. But when we look at the players here in a second, you're going to see that there's only top tier players that really succeed at this track. And it can be a case where a golfer can get really hot and have a really, really strong ball striking. We can find himself in contention, but no scrubs are going to be around out here. You have to be on your game if you're going to find yourself on the Sunday leaderboard at PGA National. Very tough track. Last 4 years, average 9 under par winning score. Again, just a really tough track. So getting into the play, now that we know where players are stacking up, let's see, who's had success, who hasn't had any success here at this track. I've got this sorted by my adjusted course history rank. I do have my model in here, and I think you'll see a lot of agreement in who's had success at this track and my model this week. Hopefully that leads to success for us. But it's interesting to note, I guess, that we'll start at the bottom. It's interesting to note that you have some players that have really poor records here, like Billy Horschel is a great example. The last 5 years, 3 missed cuts, 2 top 10s. If you're on in ball striking, you can get yourself a hot putter on Bermuda. Again, Billy Horschel happens to be a Bermuda specialist. You'll see that with some of these guys here. Padraig Harrington found himself a win off a great ball striking year. Lucas Glover, again, great ball striker, but 3 really bad performances with 3 missed cuts in a row, and then all of a sudden a couple of top 20 performances. You can find golfers that get streaky hot here. Again, Scott Brown, missed cut, 75th, 57th, 46th. Oh, top 10. So there are guys that, Martin Keimer, for example, again, great ball striker, doesn't have the greatest years, all of a sudden puts it all together for 4 days, puts himself in the top 5. You do have to have all of your game at this track. So when we look at consistency across the last 5 years, though, in adjusted course history rank, no surprise, some of the perennial, ball strikers across any tour and world renowned, Sergio, Adam Scott, they're not great putters, though, to note. You don't have to be the greatest putter to get it done here. You do have to, however, be really, really crisp with your irons this week, especially your long irons. Again, what Sergio and Adam Scott are both known for. Coincidentally, both pretty good wind players, too. Again, you don't have to be a great wind player, but it does get breezy around here, and it does help. Obviously, with regard to consistency, it's paid off for Adam and Sergio here. Another solid wind player, ranking number 1 in the model this week, Ricky Fowler. Again, he's had a win here, a top 10, and then, struggled a few different performances with a miscut last year as well, but ranking highly in the model. A couple more ball strikers that rank highly in the model and have had success, if not limited appearances. Webb Simpson, Byung-Hun An, both really, really great long iron ball strikers. Neither one of them very good putters. Both of them put up top 5s last year. They both rate out highly in the model. Real small sample size, but the model doesn't factor in course history at all. So interesting to note the correlation there. Another correlation, Gary Woodland. Unfortunately, Gary's had a couple of lackluster performances, but does have a second place finish in 2016. And again, great ball striker, not the greatest putter. Gary tends to excel on courses despite his length, where he has to dial it back off the tee. Interesting to note here that he ranks so highly in the model. Russell Henley, same thing, long iron ball striker. Russell happens to be a very good Bermuda putter as well, and a win here back in the day. But interesting to note, a lot of correlation between my model this week and course history. Not really sure exactly what that's telling us, but I do think that there is a correlation to solid informed ball striking and this track. You don't have to be super powerful off the tee. You do, however, have to play strategic golf and be a great long iron ball striker. And I'm talking long irons here. I'm not talking, any of the wedges or the mid irons. It really is, that 175 to 225 long iron play that tends to propel golfers to the top of the leaderboards throughout. One interesting divergent player from the model versus their course history is Jason Duffner. Jason, when on, is a world-class ball striker and tends to be very tidy off the tee as well, despite his sort of awkward pre-shot routine. And again, not the greatest putter. So this week, something for you guys out there to focus on as you build your models and you drill down your various player pools is. In my world, it's going to be ball striking. I'm not going to be concerned about putting almost at all. I guess if I do factor in putting, I will take a look at guys that have been really crisp with their long irons recently, or just crisp in tee to green and struggled putting. But because we've been on POA for the last 3-4 weeks, I might give those guys a bump where their iron game is crisp and they just struggled with the surface in POA. Especially if they are positive Bermuda putters, definitely give players like that a bump. But as you see, you don't have, you've got a lot of really quality players stacked up in this group here. You don't have a lot of fluff when it comes to your ball striking in the top, 15 or so golfers in the adjusted course history. So you do need to make sure you're looking for that long iron ball striking this week. I think that'll make the difference at Honda. And again, make sure you pay attention to the weather. There can be draw bias, but I think that's going to wrap it up for us this week. This is your boy DFS Jimmy signing off for Fanshare Sports. Best of luck at the Honda Classic. We'll see everybody next week.